And he said to them, today, you're not going to make any more questions. And then tomorrow, no more questions. And then after tomorrow, no more questions.
Hello, and welcome to Life with a Lama Healer. Today, we have our 15th episode. We began this new podcast 3 months ago, a little over 3 months ago. So this is a milestone of our 15th episode. And I am so enjoying hearing these stories about Lama Gangchen and his healings and travels to sacred places from all our guests. I feel so honored to be able to interview each one of our guests and to hear their incredible stories of their life with Lama. So if you're enjoying this podcast series and you'd like to sponsor an episode or a season, we're all volunteers. It's a volunteer-driven initiative and would really love the support. Please reach out to me at lamahealer.com on how to sponsor. And so I would also like to read some reviews. Many people have left reviews on Apple Podcast. Spotify, you can leave stars. So we've earned many 5 stars on Spotify, but Apple has a platform where you actually can write a review. So I'd like to read one of the reviews. There's many that are really wonderful, but I'd like to read one of the reviews to you today. Not only is the extraordinary life of a living Buddha preserved and shared through this thoughtful and engaging podcast, but each episode is a reminder and a meditation on the fact that the true healing potential of the human spirit, as demonstrated by Lama Gangchen and those who are so inspired to carry on his message, is as powerful and dynamic as ever, as well that it is within each of us to find and utilize for the benefit of all. A truly delightful journey. I look forward to future episodes, including a few that I will listen to again. So if you're enjoying these podcast episodes, please leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or both. We'd love to have a review and to hear from you. So today we have a very special guest, Bel Cesar. Bel is from Brazil, São Paulo, Brazil, and she is the mother of Lama Michel, who many of you know. Bel is a clinical psychologist and also has written 9 books. And many of the books have been on her expertise around death and dying. And she has a new book out called Living Well, Dying Well. So she'll talk about that in this interview. But Bel has this incredible depth of experience, having been the founder of the very first Dharma Center in the West and in Brazil, Lama Gangchen's Dharma Center. She shares many stories about how that started and all the people that came and, how she developed the relationship with Lama Gangchen around all the Dharma work in Brazil. And now Brazil is one of the most active countries for Lama Gangchen's work and Lama Michel's work. And she also shares some of the journey of Lama Michel coming to know that he was the reincarnation of a Tuku and Lama Gangchen's successor. Really, really fascinating stories that she's sharing with us today. And with her is her husband and translator, Peter Webb. And Peter is translating from Portuguese to English. So those of you who are living in Brazil or speak Portuguese, you'll get to hear Bel's story in her native tongue. And then Peter is translating for the rest of us in English. So please welcome to our show, Bel Cesar and Peter Webb. We're really excited about this podcast, about the life of the great Tibetan Lama, Lama Gangchen Rinpoche, who was born in 1941 in Tibet and trained by many of the greatest Tibetan masters. He traveled to the West in the 1980s, bringing with him the inner peace teachings of the Buddha. Lama was one of the greatest living humanitarians and spiritual masters of our time, and part of an unbroken lineage dating all the way back 2,500 years to Shakyamuni Buddha. So our vision in creating this podcast is really to preserve and share the remarkable stories about Lama Gangchen's extraordinary life. We'll interview senior students and longtime followers who worked with Lama Gangchen, traveled with him, studied with him, witnessed and experienced his incredible healings and miracles. So these stories, they're really precious jewels and inspire us to really see what's possible when we follow the inner peace teachings of the Buddha. So it's a real honor and privilege to bring these stories to you and the methods that really help us to reframe our sufferings, which brings us more inner calm, the ability to be more in the present moment with less stress and anxiety and fear, and experience more joy in our life and more peaceful in our life and more meaning really in our life. So please stay tuned for our conversations from this very, very rich spiritual heritage coming out of Tibet and the incredibly joyful, inspiring, mind-blowing, funny, touching stories about the remarkable life of a Lama healer, our beloved Lama Gangchen. Life with a Lama healer. Welcome to our show.
Muito, muito prazer.
Thanks very much.
Great to have you. Please tell us, how did you meet Lama Gangchen?
Eu encontrei com Rinpoche em 1987, há 36 anos.
I met up with Rinpoche in 87, and an astrologer was in my house with Monica Benvenucci and Claudio Bianchi, and he said that I would bring this Lama to Brazil.
Para falar a verdade, eu nem sabia onde ficava o Tibete direito.
And in all truth, I didn't even know exactly where Tibet was in the world on the map.
Então, depois de um mês, estava tudo organizado. Retiro, tudo organizado. E o Rinpoche chegou.
And after 1 month from this meeting, Rinpoche arrived in Brazil with everything organized, with a retreat and all sorts of encounters organized.
Eu tentei comprar alguma coisa, um livro, para entender um pouco mais sobre budismo, mas quando só tinha um livro em português, do Anagarita Gonvida, e quando eu comecei a ler, eu achei tão complicado que eu falei, agora não importa, o importa é só trazer esse lama para cá.
And so I tried to find some information about Tibet, and there was only one book available that I found, a book by Lama Angarika Govinda. But Bel felt that it was just the energy that was important in organizing,
It was too complicated.
It was too complicated to understand everything that was written in the book.
But you had obviously some kind of feeling that why you wanted to participate, right?
Sim, porque esse astrólogo, Monsieur Charret, ele tinha dito que eu só iria sossegar a minha alma quando encontrasse alguma coisa que ressoasse para mim como verdadeira.
One of the reasons why I was so interested was that this astrologer, Monsieur Charret, he said to me that my soul would only be quietened when I found something that really touched me deeply. Yeah. And so I had this seed inside of me.
Yeah, thinking this was it.
Que fosse verdadeiro, né? Que me tocasse mas que fosse totalmente verdadeiro.
Yeah, there was just something that was really true. And seeing as he came to my house, I really felt that something really special was happening. And everything just came together really easily. It was very sort of synchronic.
Finalmente, quando o Rinpoche chegou, eu nem fui buscá-lo no aeroporto, porque eu imaginava que isso não era, a minha função era organizar, não era a função, a Mônica e o Cláudio, que fosse encontrar com eles. Eu estava muito formal.
And so when Rinpoche arrived, we met him in a Japanese restaurant at night. And in the restaurant, with all of this formality of the Japanese-style restaurant, everybody disappeared and we just looked at each other and we burst out laughing together. And this was our first contact, was just laughing together.
Com lágrimas que saíam dos olhos.
With tears that burst out of her eyes with happiness.
Então, eu me sentei, olhei um momento que ele estava olhando para outro lugar.
So I sat down and I was watching him while he was looking in another direction. Yeah, I was looking at him closely.
E eu pensei, esse é guru. É isso que as pessoas falam, é guru.
And I was thinking to myself, this is a guru. This is what people referred to as a guru. And at the same instant that I thought this, he turned around and looked straight at me in the eyes. And I said, okay, so this is a guru.
Your first moment of when you knew he could read your mind, right?
Ele disse para mim que eu era a pessoa que abriu seu primeiro centro no Ocidente.
And after 3 days, he turned to me and said, oh, you are going to be the person to open my first center in the West.
And what did you think when he said that?
Foi muito engraçado,
It was very funny.
porque ele me chamou para 1 hora para conversar com ele, mas quando eu entrei no quarto, ele estava de costas para mim, arrumando uns objetos, fingindo arrumar uns objetos numa estante.
I went to meet him. He called me to meet him, and I went into the room, and he was there just taking care of some things on the shelves, on the table, just making out that I wasn't there.
E eu falei, sim, Rinpoche, você me chamou?
And I said, Rinpoche, you called me? You asked me to come?
Ele falou, sim, sem olhar para mim, de costas.
And without looking at me, just talking with his back to me, he said, yes.
Você é a pessoa que vai abrir o meu primeiro centro no Ocidente.
You will be the person to open my first center in the Western world.
Eu falei, ok, muito obrigado. Ele falou, obrigado.
And so I said, thank you. And he said, thank you.
Como dizendo, você pode ir.
Saying, okay, that's okay, fine, bye.
It's so normal, right?
Yeah, just okay, John.
And did you know what that meant to open a center in Brazil? Did you think about does that entail?
Não, eu tive uma mistura de medo com coragem, com amor, com vontade. Era tudo misturado.
Yeah, I had a mixture of great desire to do and a lot of confusion and doubt, but just with a great desire to be involved.
Eu não tive dúvida.
There was no doubt. She had no doubt.
Medo.
She was just afraid.
Medo de que pode ser isso.
Yeah, just a fear of what this could all mean.
Yeah.
Depois, quando nós estivemos em Campos do Jordão, eu já mostrei para eles algumas terras onde a gente poderia fazer alguma coisa. Já era uma verdade, assim, vamos dizer, nos próximos dias que a gente foi, ele ficou 12 dias, 12 dias no Brasil a primeira vez.
And so then we went to a place called Campos do Jordão in Brazil, in the mountains, where we had some land and this seemed somehow possible. And we stayed there for 10 or 12 days in this first visit.
Nós já estávamos fazendo os planos para construir Eu já estava assim, ok, então vamos.
And I was already just thinking, okay, let's go to it.
Don't waste any time.
Exactly. Quando o Rinpoche foi embora, enfim, ele voltou para a Itália, eu entendi que eu queria transformar tudo na minha vida. A única coisa que eu tinha certeza, eu queria estar com meus filhos, mas a sensação que eu tinha era de transformar tudo na minha vida.
And so when Rinpoche left Brazil and went back to Italy, I had the feeling that I wanted to transform everything in my life, transform everything.
E de fato isso aconteceu, né? Eu me separei, enfim, muitas coisas aconteceram. A vinda do Rinpoche realmente foi um terremoto no bom sentido.
And in fact, this happened, my life changed completely. I got divorced and it was just like an earthquake in my life.
Wow. Like really coming to this whole new beginning, right?
Yes.
And tell us, how old was Lama Michel and Fernanda at that time?
Lama Michel tinha 5 e Fernanda... Lama Michel tinha 5 e meio, a Fernanda 1 ano e meio.
So Lama Michel, he was 5 years old and Fernanda was about 1.5 years old.
And what was Lama Michel's feeling towards Lama?
O Lama Michel não costumava dormir na casa dos outros, nada disso. Mas quando ele encontrou o Rinpoche, ele quis dormir com o Rinpoche e não foi embora. No primeiro dia, aquele dia do japonês, depois nós fomos até a casa da Mônica, ele disse que não ia embora, ele achou que ia dormir na casa com o Rinpoche.
Yeah, Lama Michel wasn't one to sleep away, sleep in his friend's house or anything like that. And then after meeting Rinpoche, he just said, I want to stay with him. And we were in Monica and Claudio's house, and he just said, I want to stay here with Rinpoche.
Durante esse período, ele teve sempre muito concentrado, muito interessado, completamente presente.
And during this whole time, he was really concentrated. He was just really focused.
E poucos dias depois que o Rinpoche foi embora, ele acordou um dia de manhã.
And a couple of days before Rinpoche went, he woke up one morning,
Colocou as suas mãos nos meus joelhos, assim,
put his hands on my thighs,
e me disse: Mãe, tem uma coisa estranha acontecendo.
Mum, oh Mom, there's a strange thing that's happening. Something strange is going on inside.
Falei: que foi, filho?
What's going on? Tell me.
Agora, quando eu acordo de manhã, eu escuto a sua voz, my voice, me dizendo: Ana, Vajrayana. O que isso significa?
When I wake up in the morning, I hear your voice, Mum, saying to me, Vajrayana, Vajrayana. What does this mean?
He was 5 years old.
Não sei, mas isso, sem dúvida, é uma palavra do Lama. Eu agora vou ler um livro e vou entender o que é. E quando eu souber achar essa palavra, eu te digo.
I told him, I said, I don't know. I guess this is a word from Lama, something that he'll know. We can find out from him, and then afterwards I'll explain it to you. Yeah.
Então eu voltei no livro do Anagarita Govinda e vi que Vajrayana era o mais alto caminho tântrico do budismo.
Then I returned to this book that I had of Angarika Govinda, and I found out that Vajrayana was the highest level of Tantric Buddhism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Como eu tinha traduzido a biografia do Rinpoche e eu vi que os lamas iam para o monastério com 3, 4 anos de idade, eu resolvi ficar quieta.
And because I translated the information about Rinpoche's life and knew about this Buddhist tradition of children going to the monastery at 3 years old, I decided that I'd keep my mouth closed.
What do you mean? Before you met Rinpoche, you knew about this tradition? Or...
Não, eu traduzi a biografia do Rinpoche. Para organizar a sua vinda, eu tinha traduzido a biografia do Rinpoche. E eu vi na biografia que ele foi para o monastério com 3 anos de idade. Eu entendi que as crianças iam muito cedo para o monastério para se tornarem lamas.
So I translated Rinpoche's biography, and I saw in this biography that Rinpoche had gone to the monastery at 3 years old. So I knew this was part of the tradition. So I thought I'd just keep quiet about
Yes,
it.
yeah. That wasn't what really I was expecting.
No, not as a mother, no.
Então, de alguma maneira, sabia que também era uma coisa preciosa que você guarda com discrição, como uma joia que você não sai mostrando. Você sabe que você tem, mas você cuida.
So obviously I talked to Daniel, his father, about it, what he'd said. But for many years, it was like keeping a precious jewel, something precious to be held and valued.
Uma joia que você sabe que é sua, mas você não sai usando ela por aí.
Like jewelry that you get, but you don't walk around showing it off. Keep it quiet and precious.
E, sem dúvida, foi muito importante ter guardado isso, porque quando o Lama Michel decidiu ele ir para o monastério, era claro que a decisão agora era dele, e não era de que nós tínhamos empurrado ele para isso. Foi ele que resolveu ir para o monastério.
This turned out to be the right action because later on, when Lama Michel decided that he wanted to go to the monastery, it was important that it was his decision to go to the monastery. He hadn't been pushed into it in any way, that it was something that came naturally from him, not from us or from anyone else.
Yeah. So then Rinpoche went back to Italy, and then what happened? Did you start the center right away? And what was happening with your center?
Quando ele voltou no ano seguinte, era tudo muito rápido.
When he returned the next year, it was all very quick.
Como eu estava tinham acontecido muitas coisas e eu estava me sentindo que eu precisava falar com ele. Minha vida tinha se transformado. A gente fazia toda semana um encontro de cantar mantras em casa.
Everything had changed so much. We'd take every week, we'd have encounters in our house, and the intensity of life had changed, and I really needed to speak with Rinpoche.
E se você lembra, naquela época, em 87, fazer uma ligação internacional era um acontecimento, era uma coisa assim, nossa, eu vou ligar para a Itália para falar com ele, para conseguir falar com ele.
Yeah, so in 87, that was quite an event to make an international telephone call. This is from Brazil to Italy, and so it wasn't that easy to organize. We really needed to just be comfortable speaking with Rinpoche.
Então eu falei, Rinpoche, eu gostaria de te convidar para vir novamente para o Brasil. Ele falou, eu só estou esperando. Assim que você quiser, eu estou indo.
So I said, oh, Rinpoche, I really need you to come to Brazil again. And he said, oh, I'm ready. I'm just waiting for you. Just tell me when and I'm there.
E dessa vez, então, eu preparei um release sobre ele, mais retiros, fiz uma coisa mais aberta. E esse release, de alguma forma, que eu não sei como, foi parar na mesa de um jornalista do principal jornal de São Paulo.
And so this time I was a little bit more organized, and I made a press release. And somehow this press release got onto the table of one of the head journalists at one of the big daily newspapers.
Até parece que eu sou uma organizadora de eventos. Não, eu sou psicóloga. Essa é que é minha profissão, não é organizadora de eventos. Não era.
It might sound like I'm an organizer of events, but I'm a psychologist. This is just what happened.
You were thrown into this role, right?
Yes, e o Rinpoche saiu na primeira página do jornal Folha de São Paulo. E quando perguntaram...
And what happened was that Rinpoche, he came out on the front page of this national newspaper, the Journal of São Paulo. Yeah.
E aí perguntaram qual é a instituição que está organizando a sua vinda para o Brasil.
And they asked, what's the institution that's organizing your trip to Brazil? It's just me. So I gave the telephone of our house. So for 3 days after this articles came out, the telephone didn't stop ringing. You'd put the telephone down and it would start ringing again. Put the telephone down and it would ring again for 3 days.
People calling, wanting to find out who is this person or what are you doing?
Porque saiu que ele era um Lama Healer e nós estávamos também no período da AIDS muito forte.
Ah, yes. So it had come out in this article that he was a Lama healer. And we were in this time of AIDS. So there was obviously great intensity around his visit.
Então, cada desses telefonemas foi dado uma hora de 15 minutos que as pessoas vinham e encontravam com o Rinpoche.
And each of these callers got a time given to them for a 15-minute consultation with Rinpoche.
Ele viu mais de 350 pessoas em 3 dias.
He saw more than 350 people during 3 days.
And you organized all this, kept all these people's names and the timing all organized. Incredible.
E então o Rinpoche perguntava qual era o seu problema. O Cláudio Tibulo era o tradutor.
And so Rinpoche would ask people what their name was, and there was Claudio Tipulo was translating for him from Tibetan to English.
Português.
Okay, yeah. So Claudio spoke a mixture of Portuguese and Spanish.
Então ele perguntava qual era o problema, depois ele ensinava o mantra Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Soha e abençoava.
So he asked them who they were, their name, and what was the problem. What was going on with them, and then shared a mantra with them, Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Soha.
And were you in the room with them also, with these people?
Lógico, tivemos vários amigos ali também ajudando.
Yeah, there were obviously many people who were helping, but I was just holding things together.
Yeah.
Sem contar que eu tinha 2 crianças pequenas, né?
That's without counting that I had 2 small children as well.
And a job.
Mas depois ele dava o cordão de proteção, né, e as medicinas tibetanas.
And he would give a blessing thread and the medicine, something.
Tibetan herbs.
Yeah.
Teve uma pessoa, eu conto isso que eu estou dizendo no prefácio do livro Autocura 1 dele.
A story in Rinpoche's first book, Self-Healing 1, that's the name of the book.
Que uma amiga perguntou para ele, Rinpoche, por que eu tenho isso, isso, isso? E o Rinpoche falava, yes.
And people would say, but Rinpoche, why have I got this? And then Rinpoche would respond, yes.
You mean they would tell him about their problems that they had or what they wanted healing for?
Just
And then ele falava, what else? What more?
oh, what else? And then they would go on and on telling the story.
Ele falava, what more?
And then he'd say, what more? What else have you got to tell me?
Então, essa pessoa fazia muitas perguntas e o Rinpoche só dava espaço para ela poder esvaziar as suas perguntas.
Yeah. So Rinpoche was giving people the space to be able to express themselves, to get it all out.
No final, ele disse, hoje você não vai fazer mais perguntas. Amanhã você não vai fazer mais perguntas. Depois de amanhã, você não vai fazer mais perguntas.
And he said to them, today, you're not going to make any more questions. And then tomorrow, no more questions. And then after tomorrow, no more questions.
Se você continuar não fazendo mais perguntas,
And if you continue not making any more questions,
você vai abrir espaço na sua mente para escutar as respostas.
you'll open up space within your mind to hear the replies, hear the answers.
So that was a big healing for this person. Slow down the question so you can actually create space in your mind and then you can hear the answers. How beautiful. That kind of reminds me of being able to listen to one's intuition or inner wisdom, to just slow down the monkey mind and listen, right? Yeah, beautiful. Did you understand Rinpoche? Because in those days, his English was very broken. Were you able to understand what he was saying, or did Claudio always translate?
My English is also broken. Depois dessa vez, quando eu vi quanto eu tinha organizado sozinha tudo o que eu tinha feito, aí eu falei, agora eu entendo porque ele pediu para mim fazer isso.
After this event, I understood why he'd chosen me to organize this event, exactly because of this broken English.
Not because of the broken English.
No, it's a sort of a line of communication
The
between
result,
the two.
o resultado de tudo que tinha acontecido, como foram tantas pessoas, foi tanto benefício, foi a partir da minha atitude. Então eu entendi que eu tinha força para fazer esse centro para ele.
Yeah, so it was her attitude. She had the strength sort of be able to do this. There'd been so many people and so many things to take care of that she'd managed to do. And so it became clear why Rinpoche had asked her to do this.
You proved to yourself that you had this capacity to do this. Yeah. It's incredible. Many of the people that we've interviewed for this show talk about that Rinpoche saw their capacity, either in a leadership role or in a teaching role, and then he really helped develop this capacity. So he saw this potential in you and really empowered you.
Então eu fui para a Itália, vim para a Itália pela primeira vez, porque eu queria visitar o que era um centro, eu não tinha ideia do que era um centro.
So I ended up going to Italy for the first time because I didn't know what Dharma Center was about. So I went to Italy to visit.
To Marco Polo, the Dharma Center in Milano?
No,
Marco
where? Polo came after.
After, I see. Was the second. Okay, so Brazilian power. Okay, all of us who are listening in our international community, we have Bel to thank for being the pioneer in ringing Lama and creating the Dharma in the West, right? Thank you so much. Incredible.
It was also a beautiful teaching. Teve ensinamento também muito bonito, porque eu recebi dinheiro de herança e eu usei ele para comprar a casa que foi o centro de Dharma por 15 anos.
So I'm sharing another beautiful teaching that I had from Rinpoche. I'd received an inheritance, and with this money I bought our house, which became the first Dharma Center. Was a Dharma Center for 15 years in São Paulo and Brazil. Yeah, afterwards they moved into a bigger space. It was the first Dharma Center in São Paulo, Brazil, for 15 years.
Então, eu estava dentro da casa antes dela ser reformada com o Rinpoche.
And I was in the house, before it was renovated, I was in the house with Rinpoche.
E perguntando com uma lista, como você viu, eu anoto tudo.
I was there with a list, listing everything. Like you've seen, I sort of got an organized mind.
Yes.
E eu comecei a perguntar para o Rinpoche, qual é a cor da parede da sala?
Yeah, what's the color that we're going to paint the wall here?
Yeah. Practical things, right?
Qual é a altura de um trono?
Oh, yeah, very practical. Yeah, what's the height of a throne? Like, can you tell me? What is it?
Yeah, how do I do this?
Good questions.
E ele foi tentando me responder quando ele viu o tamanho da lista.
Yeah, so he was going along okay, trying to reply to all of my questions, and then he looked at the size of the list.
E tinha pires com bolo na frente dele. Tinha pratinho com pedaço de bolo na frente dele.
Yeah, and in front of Rinpoche, there was a small plate with a piece of cake on it.
E ele me disse, até hoje, você, quando fez esse bolo, você esperava que os outros te dissessem, muito bem, você fez muito bem, tá ótimo. Você esperava que os outros reconhecessem o que você estava fazendo.
So up until today, this piece of cake that's on the plate, you would be waiting for people to say to you, oh, how did you make this cake? I'm curious
How good you are.
How wonderful you are.
Hoje eu te libero disso. Você não precisa mais do reconhecimento dos outros.
Okay, so now I'm going to liberate you from needing to receive other people's approval for what you've been doing.
Oh.
Você vai fazer do seu jeito. Não se preocupe com nada.
You're going to just do this, organize this Dharma Center in your way. Don't worry about what other people, just do it.
That's a big breakthrough.
E ele disse, por 5 anos, você vai ser sozinha. Você vai se responsabilizar por tudo. Depois, vão começar a vir mais pessoas para te ajudar.
And he looked at me and said, you're going to be by yourself in this for first 5 years and taking care of everything. And then people will come and start to give you a hand, but you'll be alone for the first 5 years.
What did that feel like when you heard that?
Por lado, eu estava feliz que eu tinha liberdade para fazer, mas não foi absolutamente fácil.
On one side, I was happy that I had this freedom, but it wasn't comfortable.
So, no need fear, need practicing. Very different way need to live, need a better life. This time we need to be meditated.
Sure, it is important for you to follow, to know the news, but please do not enter into fear and do not stay watching only negative news and entering into fear. It is important for us to take refuge in our practice. You know, we are from a special lineage. We have very valid methods, and this is the moment in which we need to use these methods correctly by making the different practices, by reciting mantras.
Time we tell this is a feeling need to element. So we have to be ourselves. We are the practitioner. Some kind of problem means, but our mind to be okay. This is many different way. We have to be okay. If not, we are not okay, then who's okay? So must be ourselves need to be mind like this, to practice it.
As practitioners, we must have some sort of positive pride, saying, okay, I am safe, I can take care of myself. So it is important for us not to have fear, but to use well, to protect ourselves well, to use well the time that we have, and to use well all the methods that we have. Because if we are not going to be well, then who is going to be well? We have everything that we need to be well, to protect ourselves, both physically and spiritually. So we need really to use all these methods in the best way.
Yeah, it's like going into territory you've never explored before, right? But he saw that you had the strength and the capacity to do this, right? Incredible. So I think it's really interesting because having the courage to start something that you've never done before, and all these people are coming and wanting to know Lama and know these practices, right? And it's your first time doing that. Yeah, but you had the confidence, or he gave you the confidence and the courage. Did you ever have moments where you're like, what am I doing?
Não, eu não duvidei. Eu tive uma experiência durante esse período, eu tive uma experiência muito profunda, com medo de poder estar com uma doença que gerasse, que representasse a minha mortalidade.
Yeah, I can say I really didn't doubt at any point. But during this time,
Era totalmente cada a organizar essas coisas, trabalhar, cuidar dos filhos que não estavam comigo naquele medo de ter essa doença. Eu estava enfrentando a morte. Então, o Dharma era água no deserto, era o que me sustentava. A minha relação com o Rinpoche é o que me sustentava. Então, em nenhum momento eu tinha dúvida de que eu estava fazendo o mais importante.
so at this time I had my kids, I had the Dharma Center, and this illness that was threatening my life. And I was really stretched, and what was really holding me together was Dharma. This was like water in the desert to me, the Dharma at this moment in my life.
So you actually had an illness.
Diagnóstico, eu tive que esperar alguns meses e eu sabia que existia a possibilidade. Durante esse período, minha mente era só...
Yeah, so she had to wait for the diagnosis several months. And so she didn't know. She was in this sort of a limbo or bardo state of not knowing exactly. So I was pretty nervous about just having all of this stuff, the kids and the Dharma Center, and then this possibility of, oh, have I got this illness or no?
I tell you one beautiful story. Quando os jornalistas vieram para fazer a entrevista para o Rinpoche, para a primeira página, aqueles jornalistas.
Yeah, so when the journalists came and talked to Rinpoche and made an interview with Rinpoche for this big newspaper in São Paulo.
Eles estavam diretamente do aeroporto, o Rinpoche chegou na casa da Cláudia Prochan e os jornalistas já estavam lá.
And so Rinpoche just came straight from the airport to Claudia Prochan's house, and the journalists were waiting there for him.
Nós não tivemos tempo quase de conversar.
And we really hadn't had any time at all to talk between us.
Eu estava sentada num canto, vendo a entrevista, mas congelada de medo de que eu pudesse estar doente.
I was in one corner of the room watching and listening to the interviewer sing, but I was frozen, I was frozen there.
Vai do medo de estar doente.
With the fear of being ill.
O Rinpoche me olhou, parou a entrevista, veio até mim, pegou a minha mão e me levou para o quarto.
But she looked at me and he stopped the interview, got up, took my hand, and we went into another room beside there. He could see.
E me perguntou, what happened?
What happened? Tell me.
Aí eu falei para ele, então, o que estava acontecendo. Ele escaneou o meu corpo, me olhou de cima a baixo e falou, você não tem nada, mas eu vou rezar para que você nunca tenha nada mesmo.
He looked at me, scanned my body from top to bottom, and looked at me and he said, you haven't got anything. But from then onwards, he said, I will pray for you and you'll be okay.
And then you had a huge sigh of relief, right?
Sim, mas eu queria o diagnóstico na mão.
Yes, I did sigh deeply, but I still wanted the diagnosis in my hand.
I know you said that it was really natural, this whole process of meeting him and being with him and starting the center. But what were the qualities about him that had you trust him so much and want to follow him?
Uma das qualidades do Rinpoche era a capacidade dele de dançar com os fenômenos.
Yeah, one of the great qualities that struck me with Rinpoche was his capacity to dance with the phenomena.
Ele não criava resistência e tinha sempre uma posição positiva, uma confiança positiva.
Yeah, he never created any resistance, and he always had a really positive attitude. Even the most difficult situations, he managed to transform them into positive.
Eu me lembro que nós fomos visitar, não na primeira vez, já nas outras vezes, nós fomos visitar uma família que tinha uma mulher que estava muito doente na casa.
I remember another time we went to visit our house where there was a woman who was very sick. We went there together.
E ele, então, quando viu a situação e nós voltamos para a sala,
And when he saw the situation that the woman was in, they returned to the living room. They left the woman alone. And instead of just saying, oh, yes, not really good, she's going to die,
ele pegou uma carta e colocou no pescoço de cada pessoa da família, cantando By the power of the truth, peace and bliss, now and forever.
yeah, instead of saying something, he just picked up a kata, which is Tibetan tradition, gave a kata to each person and just said, peace, bliss forever, peace and bliss forever.
Cantando, né?
Yeah.
By the power of the heart, the truth. Gerou um ambiente de interesse, de confiança em todos, mas todos entenderam que ela então iria morrer.
And this simple action just created a unified energy between the people, and people knew what was going on. They knew that she was going to die, but just there was this unified energy between the people from this act, this simple act.
So like really taking care and bringing everyone to support her. So you said that this experience that you had, this illness, before you had the diagnosis that you weren't ill, and then this experience with this woman, this inspired you to then work with people who are dying? Or what was it that inspired that?
This inspired me, isso me inspirou como trabalhar, mas a decisão de trabalhar veio antes.
Yeah, this inspired me more how to work, but the decision had come before.
Eu tive muitas experiências fazendo os pacientes terminais, fazendo a autocura que o Rinpoche ensinou.
I'd had quite a lot of experience with different patients since knowing Rinpoche of working with self-healing, the self-healing practice. So these positive experiences were very strong for her.
So you integrated the self-healing practice with your patients.
Principalmente com os pacientes terminais.
Yeah, basically with the terminally ill patients.
So you had already been working with people who were terminally ill in your clinical practice?
Eu tinha 30 anos, passaram-se 36 anos. Depois que eu tive tudo isso, organizei, comecei a trabalhar em 1999, 10 anos depois que eu conheci o Rinpoche. Não, imagina, 99, 89, 90, desculpa. Eu comecei a trabalhar com os pacientes terminais 3 anos depois que eu conheci o Rinpoche.
Okay, I started working with terminally ill patients 3 years after getting to know Rinpoche. Yeah.
Além como psicoterapeuta dos atendimentos de consultório.
Yeah, that's beside being a psychotherapist in the clinic with my patients.
Eu só atendia um paciente por vez e não era ligado a nenhum hospital.
This work with terminally ill patients was just with the patients and their families. It wasn't connected via the hospital.
What was it about people who were terminally ill that inspired you to want to go in that direction?
Porque eu vi quanta solidão você pode sentir quando você está olhando a sua possibilidade de morrer.
Yeah, so in these terminally ill, I could see and I could feel the loneliness of facing this situation, and this is what drew me to working with the terminally ill.
Teve dia que eu, antes de receber o diagnóstico final, que estava tudo bem, dia eu estava no carro e não podia sair porque chovia muito.
Just before getting the final result of my exam, it was raining heavily and I couldn't get out of the car. It was just raining too hard.
E eu tive a sensação, eu prometi que se eu saísse dessa bem, eu ia ajudar outras pessoas a lidarem com esses momentos, porque eu vi o quanto era difícil saber com quem você podia compartilhar que não gerasse mais medo para você, ou você tivesse que organizar a dor do outro, se for cumpridor.
Yeah, so in this moment, I felt what it must be like for these people to be facing this situation alone, like the terminally ill. And at that moment, I made a pact to help people who are facing the same situation that I was feeling at that moment myself. She was waiting for the results of this exam. So this feeling of holding the loneliness by yourself and feeling that and saying, yeah, this is something that I really think would be good to help people with.
So you had this compassion for people going through this situation.
Uma coisa que eu aprendi com o Rinpoche e nesse trabalho é a não organizar as pessoas, mas estar junto com elas.
Yeah, what I'd learned with Rinpoche was this thing of not organizing people, just going together with the people, but not to organize them. This is what I'd learned from Rinpoche.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean? Say a little more about that.
Muitas vezes, quando você vai pedir um conselho para o Rinpoche, você falava, Rinpoche, está acontecendo isso e isso, e você esperava que ele te dissesse o que fazer.
Many times with Rinpoche, you'd go and ask him a question, or you'd have some problem that you'd share with him. What can I do about this? Tell me, I'm wanting some information. I need some answer from you.
A gente queria que o outro dissesse o que nós temos que fazer. A gente espera.
Yeah, tendency of wanting the other to tell us what to do rather than us taking care of ourselves or knowing within ourselves what to do.
A maneira como o Rinpoche escutava os meus problemas e ele pedia, e o que você pensa? O que você quer fazer?
And the way that Rinpoche would listen to my questions or would take me back into myself. What would you like to do? How would you like to do this? It was always coming back to the person, helping them to return to themselves, to find some sort of answer within rather than just this answer coming from outside.
Porque é muito importante, como eu aprendi com o Rinpoche,
And I learnt with Rinpoche how important it is
descobrir o nosso próprio poder, nosso próprio potencial, mais do que seguir uma ideia que os outros dizem para você.
how important it is to discover our own potential rather than getting somebody else to organize us.
That's really interesting point, because many people think of if you have a guru or a spiritual guide, then you go to that person and they're going to answer all your questions, or you ask them a question and they're going to answer it for you. But you're saying very clearly Rinpoche was directing you to listen to your own inner wisdom, right? That the answer, you could discover it for yourself, really empowering you. Yes?
Yeah, maybe I can say something because Rinpoche had a wonderful way of listening to people and just helping them to speak more. He would just listen and then say, yes, tell me more, and this thing of feeling listened to is not so obvious in our world. And Rinpoche was a real master at listening to people. You could know that he was listening from his heart, not with his mind so much,
Yeah. And in that listening, you were known, right? You had this feeling that you were known. It was incredible. More than anyone I've ever met in my life, I felt so known by him. And many people say this, yeah? Is there one experience that you had that was really memorable where you saw Rinpoche really healing someone who was either mentally sick or physically sick?
Ok, eu tenho uma experiência, ela é meio engraçada, mas é a que me veio na cabeça.
Yeah, I have one experience. It's a little bit funny, but I'll tell you.
Yeah.
A primeira vez que o Rinpoche veio, naquelas consultas de 15 minutos, quando ele esteve aqui,
The first time when Rinpoche came to Brazil, when we had all of those consultations with these many people coming,
veio uma menina que tinha uma infecção na vagina, no lábio da vagina,
there came a girl who had an infection on her vagina,
no lábio, né?
on the labios of the vagina.
E ela precisava tirar o abscesso, precisava fazer uma operação para tirar o abscesso, mas ela tinha alergia a uma das medicações.
And so she would have to have an operation to take this abscess off the labule, but she was allergic to one of the drugs that she had to take.
Então, quando o Rinpoche tentou entender, e o Cláudio explicando, Cláudio Puro explicando, o Rinpoche falou para o Cláudio dizer para ela, deixa eu ver.
So this is with Claudio Cipulo trying to understand, to be able to translate, do the translation between putting together his Portuguese and Spanish. But she turned to Claudio and said, ask her to show me. Okay.
Ela muito embaraçada, levantou, mostrou.
And she was quite embarrassed, and so she just slowly lifted up her dress.
E o Rinpoche começou a cuspir, né?
And Rinpoche, one of his ways, he just started to spit.
Yeah. E ela mais embaraçada, eu estava presente.
And she was just really embarrassed as Bel was just standing there looking, just watching.
And that was one method that Rinpoche had of healing people, right? Either blowing on the sickness or spitting on it. Yes.
Foi embora. Falei, nossa, que situação.
And so she ended up going away and just Bel felt, oh God, what sort of situation? That really, that was a very awkward situation, exactly.
E no último dia, ela voltou com um ramo de flores enormes e mostrou para ele que a infecção tinha ido embora.
And on the last day of his visit, she came back with an enormous bouquet of flowers and showed Rinpoche that there was no problem. It had been resolved.
Ela mesma.
The abscess was gone.
Yeah, she just came up and lifted up her skirt and said, look, no problem.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Wow. Incredible. We must have witnessed many of these over the years in Brazil, right? Yeah. Did Rinpoche have a saying or something that he always said to you that you remember? Yeah. Can you tell us what that was?
Muitos, mas dos meus principais ensinamentos que ele deixou diretamente para mim.
Yeah, there are many, but the principal one that I remember that was for me, that Rinpoche gave me.
2.
2, okay, so...
Foi, mesmo que eu tivesse todo o dinheiro do mundo e pudesse comprar um supermercado inteiro.
First one was, even if I had all the money in the world and I could buy a whole supermarket full of stuff.
Eu não poderia, nessa mesma vida, usufruir de cada coisa com prazer.
In this lifetime, I wouldn't be able to use everything and have pleasure from it.
Por isso, eu tenho que escolher o que escolher, o que eu escolho, né? Fazer escolhas.
So, and obviously it helped me to realize that I just needed to make choices.
E mesmo quando eu estou perto de familiares que dizem, puxa, tinha tantas coisas que eu ainda queria viver com o meu marido, com o meu pai, e ele morreu.
And even the feeling of, I want to live more, I want to have more experiences with this person, just hang on so that we can have more time together. This sense of having more.
Ou a pessoa que está morrendo dizer, é muito cedo, eu ainda quero fazer muitas coisas.
Or the person who's dying young.
E a pessoa está morrendo, qualquer idade.
But the person is dying and they just say, there's more that I want to do.
Não importa, jovem ou velho, a sensação é de que eu ainda quero fazer mais coisas nessa vida.
Yeah, it doesn't make any difference whether they're old or young, just this thing of wanting to do more.
So you think that's just a natural thing that happens when one is facing their death, that they want to do more?
Não, eu não generalizo nada.
Yeah, I don't generalize, about it, but...
Mas nesses casos, quando as pessoas dizem, eu queria viver tanto mais...
But in these cases, when people will express, I want to live so much more.
Quando eu conto a história do supermercado, elas aceitam, a verdade entra.
When I share with them this story about the supermarket, it helps them to focus, it helps them to deeply accept.
So interesting that For many of us, we direct our attention to, I want to do more or I want to have more. But we're not looking at, like you said to me the other day about the ontological, who are we being in this situation? Who do we want to be in this situation? Yeah. And that's what you bring to them, right?
Fazer as pazes com o nosso real tamanho.
They're making peace with our real size, how big we really are, being true to ourselves, being aware of this. Yeah.
So when you're talking with the patients, are you showing them mantras or are you doing practice with them? Or tell us how you actually help these people.
Yes, dependendo de cada momento, de cada coisa, depende de cada paciente é um paciente. Não existe, eu nunca sei o que eu vou fazer. Só quando eu encontro a pessoa, junto com a pessoa, nós encontramos o que é melhor de ser feito.
Yeah, I never know exactly what I'm going to do. Always together with the patient, it arises what's necessary to be done. So there's no fixed recipe of doing mantras or saying prayers or whatever, then just being totally open with the patient to know what to do.
Deeply listening to them and what they need.
Ok, o segundo ensinamento.
So the second teaching that was very important for me.
Uma vez eu falei para o Rinpoche no telefone, falei, Rinpoche, eu estou conseguindo olhar a negatividade de frente.
One time on the telephone, I said to Rinpoche, I said, I'm managing to look at negativity in the face.
Ele falou, look is good, but do not touch.
Okay, I think you got it. But it's worthwhile repeating, look, but don't touch.
Ele disse que a gente tinha que, como as notícias ruins do noticiário, né? Chega na tua casa, você escuta, mas você não deixa entrar dentro de casa. A mesma coisa, a gente tinha que lidar com a negatividade, do mesmo modo.
Yeah, in the same way that the negative news, you don't allow it to come into your house, we use the same attitude of not allowing negativity to come into us. Yeah.
Into our minds.
Into our minds, yeah.
That one is so useful, right? Both of those, but we all have our common habits of thinking in a negative way or perceiving things in a negative way, and to not go there, to train ourselves to not go there. Yeah. Wow. Very useful. Yeah. So I know that you have a new book out and it's called Live Well, Die Well, and about to be, or soon to be translated in English. You have it in Portuguese. Yeah. So can you tell us about the book? We'd really love to hear more about your book.
Muito obrigada por essa pergunta.
Okay, thanks for asking this question.
Durante o período da pandemia,
During the time of the pandemic,
e morando aqui na Itália, tendo que preparar os cursos que foram pedidos para eu dar em italiano.
during this time, living here in Italy, while preparing courses that I was asked to give here in Italy,
Eu tive a vontade, eu tive a motivação de escrever um livro sobre tudo que eu aprendi até hoje.
I had a great desire to be able to write about everything that I've learned up until now, about trauma and how to deal with trauma.
De acordo com a experiência somática de Peter Levine,
According to this somatic experience that was brought by Peter Levine
e a teoria polivagal de Steve Porges.
and the polyvagal theory of Stephen Porges.
Depois eu refleti muito sobre as necessidades ontológicas diante da vida e da morte,
And then reflecting also about the ontologic necessities of life and death.
como, por exemplo, de sentirmos que nós temos uma base de sustentação.
For example, how we have a base that sustains us, that supports us.
As necessidades ontológicas são necessidades que nós temos como seres humanos,
These ontologic necessities, these basic necessities that we have as human beings,
desde a gestação até o momento de morrer,
since the time of pregnancy up until when we die.
necessidades que temos independente da cultura, do sexo e da cultura, o sexo,
Yeah, these necessities that are not dependent upon the culture, whether we're male or female, what sex we are,
das nossas condições materiais,
our material conditions, sort of these basic necessities without the frills, basic necessities from country to country, from people It doesn't matter what race you are, human beings have certain necessities, you could say.
Eu vi que quanto mais uma pessoa era atendida nessas necessidades humanas, mais preparada ela estava para lidar com a morte.
And I perceived through the years of my work that the more people had these necessities attended to in their lives, the more prepared they are to die, facing death.
Depois eu refleti, eu escrevi sobre como cada religião vê a morte e como são os funerais, quais são os comportamentos durante um funeral.
And I researched and wrote also about how each religion relates to death, what are their ceremonies, how people prepared for facing death by the different religions from around the world.
Depois eu fiz falar sobre o luto.
And also in the book is about how we deal with mourning, this process of mourning.
E também como lidar com assuntos mais delicados como suicídio, aborto.
Also subjects like abortion and suicide, which are very much taboo sort of subjects. So I talk about these in the book as well.
E depois todo o processo da morte, o que fazer em cada momento.
And then also about the dying process and how to deal with this.
E todos esses assuntos estão preenchidos dos ensinamentos que Rinpoche falava espontaneamente, não necessariamente só aquilo que ele disse durante o Gompa ou num livro, mas aquilo que ele falava. Eu era atrás, era um hunter dessas frases que ele falasse espontaneamente.
And all of this is interwoven with phrases and moments from being together with Rinpoche, from his words and his teachings, not being in a very direct way, but interwoven. Bel was always catching phrases and things that Rinpoche would say and writing them down. She has an enormous number of teachings and books and things full of things that Rinpoche. And so this is interwoven together with these subjects about humanity and about death, the processes of life and death, but with these little jewels of information from Lama Gangchen.
Wow.
Yeah.
I look forward to reading this book. Very beautiful.
Also, which I hasn't said yet, but there's a lot of her paintings. I don't know whether I should talk about this. There's paintings that are very much feeling put into. They're not just painting, they're not teaching paintings. They're paintings that sort of embody something of what's involved in the chapter. And so there's an incredible diversity of paintings.
Beautiful. You're so talented too. What a jewel. Yeah. And to weave in Lama's sayings over the years just adds that extra wisdom. And Tibetan Buddhism is so rich in the tradition of how to live well and how to die well. I grew up Catholic and studied to be an interfaith minister. And there isn't a whole lot of information about how to die well. But in Tibetan Buddhism, there's so many books about what happens at death time and how to really take care of people who are dying and what happens. And then, of course, about reincarnation, which, if you believe that, changes your whole worldview, right? This book is so useful and helpful for people because we need this, because there's not one of us who hasn't been touched by death, and we will all leave our bodies, right? So to really learn and to consider how to do it well. I remember Rinpoche always saying the most important thing is when we are dying to be peaceful. If you're the person who's helping someone to really help them to be peaceful, then they'll have a more peaceful rebirth. But your book is obviously filled with so much more to help us navigate that. So incredibly helpful and useful.
Rinpoche falava que quando uma pessoa estivesse morrendo, o corpo poderia is going down, podia estar sofrendo, mas a mente podia estar subindo.
Rinpoche, he said, when the person is dying, the body is going down, the mind can go up. The mind is going up. Yeah.
Beautiful. Bel, if you had some advice that you could give to other spiritual seekers, what advice would you give them?
Você me deixou em silêncio.
You left her silent. We could all feel it.
It's only a moment, though.
Porque eu acredito que a principal é você sentir que aquela conexão deixou o teu corpo se sentindo seguro. Você foi num puja, encontrou um mestre e depois disso você sentiu uma sensação de estar seguro em si.
Yeah, talvez the most important thing is these encounters, or if you go to one ceremony, in special meetings of feeling secure in your body, just this importance of being able to feel in your body this security.
You feel comfortable with yourself. Você se sente mais confortável em você depois que encontrou esse lama e fez esse puja, visitou um templo. Você sente que você ganhou segurança.
Yeah, so that you learn to use your body to feel whether you feel secure, whether you feel.
Você ganhou segurança depois que você viu um lama, um puja, uma situação. Depois disso, você sente que você ganha segurança.
After meeting a lama or after going to a ceremony or doing a prayer, that you feel more secure afterwards in your body. Yeah.
It's important to have that experience. And someone who's just starting on the Dharma path, this is really important. Anything else you could say to someone to encourage them to keep on the path, to keep studying, practicing?
Eu não sou uma pessoa que pratica sadhanas.
She's not the person who practices sadhanas.
O Rinpoche dizia que tem pessoas que praticam através das sadhanas, que ele chamava mais yogi style. Dizia que tinha pessoas que praticavam o budismo mais através de sadhanas como yogi.
Okay. Yeah, so Rinpoche said that there are people who practice the sadhanas in a way more like a yogi.
So that would be just in everyday life you're practicing, yes?
Rinpoche dizia que você podia praticar o budismo, as sadhanas, ou através das sadhanas, como um yogi.
So Rinpoche would say, you can do the sadhanas, you can do the prayers, or you can do...
Or você podia ter algumas pessoas que têm mais a experiência direta, não através das práticas.
And there are other people who have more of a direct experience of the sadhanas. Yeah.
Uma coisa não exclui a outra.
Yeah, there's not one better than the other. One doesn't exclude the other.
Mas eu tenho essa familiaridade e confiança que a sabedoria do budismo ela pode ser aplicada em qualquer situação. E eu vivo o Dharma 24 horas por dia. Nos sonhos também.
Yeah, I have the faith and the confidence that Dharma can be practiced 24 hours a day in any situation. And this is the way that I live. Even sleeping, I sleep with the Dharma as well. And I dream with Dharma as well. So I have this practice, this way of practicing Dharma, which is not directly praying with all of the sadhanas, but mine is a direct experience.
Então eu diria para essa pessoa escolher uma frase, um ensinamento que ela escutou que ressoou para ela como importante.
What I'd suggest to people is just to pick up one phrase, something that touches them deeply, and live with this, allowing that to touch them.
Quando eu comecei o budismo, eu escutei um ensinamento que era:
When I started out in Buddhism, I heard one teaching, which was,
deixe o lugar, a pessoa por onde você passar, sempre melhor de quando você entrou.
always leave the place where you are or the person better than what you found it or the way that you found it in the beginning. This is what Dharma is this. Make a difference.
So beautiful. So many things to think about and to really contemplate what you've shared with us today. So beautiful. So I like to ask you if you could close with a dedication or a prayer, maybe a favorite prayer that you have or a mantra that you have, so that we could dedicate this conversation to help all beings.
I would like to conclude this in silence, remembering, feeling what really is truth for us, giving time and space for this truth to manifest in us.
Thank you so much, Bel and Pete. This has really been a beautiful conversation, and I'm sure everyone who's listening will be really inspired. Thank you for joining us. In Brazil's heart, where mystic rivers flow, Bel Cesar's spirit found its vibrant glow. A mother and teacher guiding souls with grace, in Lama Gangchen's teachings she found her place. With wisdom deep, she treads a sacred way, co-founding centers where minds found their ray. From death's embrace she offered solace sweet, a gentle soul, life's wonders to release. In Bel's bright presence, we find pure grace, a beacon of compassion in every place. Her journey's wisdom shared with open heart, a testament to lives she's helped to chart. Wow, wow, wow. What a deep conversation that was with Bel and Pete. Incredible. I'm going to listen to this conversation a few times to absorb a lot of the wisdom that was shared. You know, Bel has so much experience in all her work, working with Lama Gangchen and working with people around living well and dying well. And, Buddhism has so much wisdom around this topic, and I so appreciate that, because I've found that for myself, the more I understand what happens after, I leave my body, after each one of us leaves our body, that we have this temporary home, that our consciousness continues. And the more I study that and practice about that process, the more happiness I have in my life to live joyfully. So I love the title of her new book, Living Well, Dying Well. And if you would like more information about Bel's books, we'll put a link in our show notes, our description, where you can purchase her books and find out more about the work that she's doing. You can find all of Bel's books on Amazon. It's Bel, B-E-L, Cesar, C-E-S-A-R. And we're also looking for a publisher who will publish Bel's new book in the United States, a publisher here in the U.S. who can publish the book Living Well, Dying Well in English. So if anyone has a resource for that, please reach out to me. We'd love to hear from you. So one of the things that I really love about what Bel said from one of Lama Gangchen's messages that he always gave to her was that always leave a place or a situation better than you found it. Really make a difference. And to bring that kind of awareness whenever we're meeting someone new or going to a new place or going into a situation, whether it's at work or with our families or socially, or even our outer environment, to really think about, how can I make a difference here? How can I make this place or this person or this situation better? And even if we don't have a direct answer, that we have that thought and that intention is so important. And Lama Gangchen, everywhere I went with him, he always made it better. I remember several times going to China and going to one of these temples that was all dilapidated and very few people came. And then the next year we would go and it would have new fresh paint and they'd have a new pagoda built and more people would be coming. And there was an increase in energy. And then the next year we would go, or a few years later when we would go, and then it would have expanded and it'd be even more beautiful and more people and more positive energy. Every place he went, he improved the situation, improved people's lives, improved the outer and inner situation. So I think that's something really important for all of us to remember and to really keep, front center in our minds and in our intentions. Please follow along with us. And if you would like to ask us a question, or you have a story that you'd like to share about a meeting that you had with Lama Gangchen or a healing, you could go to lamahealer.com. And to find out more information about Lama Gangchen's work, you could go to nalso.org, where there's information about our retreat centers around the world, humanitarian work, books, CDs, music, all kinds of resources there. And so I'd like to also make a shout out to Ilaria Ceccarelli for her beautiful recording of Lama Ken. And also to our producer, Jason. He's been extraordinary to work with and, really helping us bring this podcast together to make a difference. So thanks for joining us. Until next time, be well, be happy, be peaceful. Lama Ken.